Welcome back to Fishing and Hunting Texas. It's post-rut season on the Wendlandt Ranch, and today, Clark thinks he knows just the time and place to start hunting.
It ought to be a jam-up day. Got a good wind. We're sitting in a spot where a lot of deer come in, so hopefully they'll come up out of some thick brush, out of a big creek bottom, up into where we are. I hope it'll be a jam-up hunt. Let's go see what happens. You know, one time that people don't really think of bow hunting all that much, most people bow hunt in November and October, but I bow hunt all deer season long, and the situation when you get into post-rut and those deer are really coming to a food source, you can really target some great deer just by getting to the spot where they want to be the most. You got to think about your wind, you got to make sure they're not going to see you, but post-rut can be a super great time to bow hunt. Now, last year there was tons and tons of deer that spent time in our fields. And we have oat patches planted, but there's lots of little clover, little green stuff. Even where we didn't plow and plant, they come out in those fields. They just like being out in the open. You know, as a bow hunter, it's hard to kill a deer in a big giant field. Really the only way you can do it is to be in the spot where they actually access the field, where they come into it. We're here early afternoon. It's mostly post-rut, so they're about done chasing. All they want to do is eat. And we're sitting in the right spot. A lot of deer come up out of this creek, come into this field here. We'll see what happens.
Unfortunately for Clark, he soon finds that the deer are coming in, but not where he expected.
We've already had 3 or 4 bucks, a couple doe, come in from an unusual direction, and they got our wind, actually. That's just part of it. I mean, this field's going to have deer all over it in the last 2 hours of the day. So, I mean, you're hoping the right deer, the one you want. Good mature buck comes in where you got a shot at it. When you're hunting a food source, someplace that deer want to come to eat, you got to be in the best place. And as we sat there, we're looking out. The way I'm faced is I look down into this creek bottom, big elm bottom, and there's just deer moving around down in there all afternoon. I can just see them moving around down in there. What they're doing right now is they're spending time in these big creek bottoms. There's a lot of old elm trees, coyotes howling in the background. But there's a lot of old elm trees, but there's a lot of green grass, little fescue, little clover, all kinds of little green stuff. And that's where they're spending their time. They're not even getting up to the field because they got so much to eat right where they're standing. So we saw a lot of deer working through this flat today, and there's a gigantic oak tree right here. I mean, monster. And we're gonna have us a stand right there in that crook come morning. I don't know if it's gonna work. Is it gonna be too new? It's really high above where those deer really wanna be. I think it's gonna be pretty cool. Now, we built stands our whole lives. We've always, you know, do it in the middle of the night, we'll do it one day, hunt it the next, we'll do it a week ahead of time, but it doesn't always work out. When you're hunting like that, you just never know until that stand gets sat in several times and see how the deer actually react to it. Because will they wind you there? Is there some circling winds? That's one thing to think about. Another thing is you might be skylighted, you might be seen. Well, heck, we picked the best, biggest, most gigantic tree on the whole ranch. It's a giant live oak. I can't even get my arms a quarter of the way around it. It's huge. Hey, right at dark, we showed this tree right here. And we came in here and actually drilled a stand into this tree. It wasn't that much. We just kind of cut our lumber quiet as we can, not making much racket. It's a dark night. Those deer just laying down wherever they are. There's just so many deer in this flat. We felt like in the middle of the night it would be better. And I mean, you talk about a grand old tree. I mean, this is a gigantic tree. The thing about it is it sits on a bank. We're not very high, but we're 20 feet up on a bank. And so that elm flat that we've been talking about, that's where those deer are gonna be moving. So basically, we're sitting in a stand we've never sat before. I have no idea if it's gonna work, but it'll be fun to try. Let's go see. We've hunted this ranch for 30 plus years. And we've got stands littered all over this place. I mean, there are so many stands on this ranch, you can't even imagine. We've never even considered having a stand in this particular tree. And it ended up being just perfect because it's only 8 feet up for me and Scott, camera guy, we're sitting there, but we're up on the top of a bank and looking down, and we're probably 25 feet above where those deer are. So they just didn't look at us. They didn't look up our way. The other great thing is it's big, giant trunks. I mean, the trunks of that oak tree are huge. It's just one of those spots that those deer just don't seem to pay attention to. And that first morning, we saw some bucks moving through that flat and they were feeding in it. We didn't get busted, so we knew we were like in the right spot. We knew everything was right, but we didn't really know for sure until that second hunt, that afternoon hunt, and there's deer moving through that flat all day. They're going, they're coming across the creek, they're coming through the flat, they're going on the other side of us, they're just working through there. And we're sitting there that afternoon and all, we'd had a great hunt, but the oldest deer we saw was probably a 4-year-old. And there were some little small bucks moving through there, and some doe, and we kind of considered shooting a doe, but then all of a sudden, pretty late, here comes this buck. When we saw that deer coming, you could just tell by his body. He's just really thick in his chest, real mature looking, big 8-point. He broke a brow tine, but I mean, there wasn't any deer getting in his way. Everything was just moving out of his way. There were some other deer in that flat when he came through there, and he was the boss. He came in, and here he comes. He's coming along, and he gets to about probably 30 yards before I'm gonna draw. And my cameraman brother, Scott, says, "Hey, I just lost your mic."
I lost your volume. I can't hear you.
We couldn't move at that point. Those deer are too close. It's not like you can fiddle around and make a change on it. By the time I was ready to draw, that deer had gotten behind a tree, moved on. We didn't get a chance to shoot it. I mean, you talk about a bummer. That's a low point right there. Everything's perfect, you're ready to shoot, but you can't capture it.
It's early morning on the Wendlandt Ranch, and Clark is back in the field, ready to pick up where he left off after a technical malfunction cost him an excellent buck.
So the very last deer that comes in yesterday afternoon, everything's absolutely perfect. He feeds for just a second, he's coming right to us. We get to where we're gonna draw, and bam, I mean, all of a sudden the mic goes out, my mic. And so, we're scrambling. Well, he gets by my window to where we're gonna shoot. We're gonna go back this morning. Maybe we'll see that deer, maybe we'll see a different one. It ought to be fun. Let's go see. When you look at this country that we were hunting, it almost reminds me of somewhere up in the Midwest. All the leaves are gone. We've had some hard freezes and there's no leaves on the trees except the live oaks. Those trees don't lose their leaves until the spring. They do fine in the winter, so we can actually hide amongst those trees. But as you're looking out there in that flat, there's little green stuff everywhere, little stuff coming up. And that's where those deer were wanting to spend their time. They were coming back and forth across the creek because they liked both sides of it. The other thing is that all those elms, it's mostly an elm bottom down there, they've all lost their leaves, so you can kind of see everything that's going on. I mean, it was a pretty unique hunt for Texas. All of a sudden, it's just getting light enough where that camera can see, and here comes that same 8-point. And he comes in really from the same direction. He kind of made a loop, and he circles around, and he comes in, and when he gets in there, I just totally focused on him. I zoned out. I didn't even worry. I mean, there was a couple other bucks around, deer. I think there was a fawn not too far away, but I just zoned in totally on him. I wasn't going to let him get past me again.
Now, Clark may have had some difficulty with the camera equipment, but he has no doubts whatsoever about his trusty Cabela's Fortitude bow.
It used to be, before I got that Cabela's Fortitude, 20 yards, 25 yards, that's really as far as I wanted to shoot. That bow has just given me the ability to reach out there and shoot a little bit farther. And I still want to make a great shot. I still want everything to be perfect, but I've got a lot of confidence in that bow. And I drew the first opportunity I had. He was barely behind, just a little bit of a bush to me. As soon as he stepped out, bam, I made a perfect shot. I think he's down already. He ran up into a creek bank and I didn't see him come out the other side. Big old 8-pointer. Same one we had yesterday evening. Same deer. Bam! Drilled him. Oh. I mean, that was a 35-yard shot, and that arrow went through that deer so fast. You know, we could see it sitting on the ground before the deer even jumped up out of the way. Here's my arrow. That's a good sign right there. Blood all the way up and down it. Blood on the grass. Blood here. He ran kind of into a little creek bottom and ended up falling in the creek. And we kind of heard him fall in the creek. There he is right there. He's laying in the creek. We got to somehow figure out how to get across it. Oh my gosh, get up here, guy. Oh. Gigantic Texas whitetail. Look at that guy. I mean, this guy right here had such a gigantic body. When he came in, I mean, there was just no doubt of his maturity level. He broke off a brow tine, but he's real distinct color looking, you know. A lot of those deer had some red and brown in them. This one's gray, but he's just so full-bodied. I mean, when you saw him, even next to a 4-year-old, even a 5-year-old, this deer here's easily at least 6, if not 7. Man, I'm proud of him. Bam! Everything worked great. The stand, the setup, we moved, we did it. Timing worked good. We even dealt with a bad mic and made it work. That's fun. That's pretty fun right there. I could never get tired of doing that.